Hi, I'm Amy, just your average college student, but I've got a story to tell, one that still keeps me up at night sometimes. To really understand how everything went wrong, though, I need to take you back to where it all began. I was 14 when we lost Dad. My sister was only 9. It happened so fast. One minute he was heading home from work, the next we were getting a call about a car accident. Some drunk driver had run a red light and slammed right into him. He hung on for 3 days in the hospital, but his injuries were just too severe. After Dad died, Mom was completely devastated. I remember her sitting in Dad's parents' living room, tears streaming down her face as she told them, "I'll never marry again. There will never be another man like John." My grandparents, Dad's parents, were amazing through it all. They let us stay in their house and made sure we had everything we needed. Mom didn't even have to work, they sent her money every month to take care of us. But that's when things started changing with Mom. It was subtle at first, but as time went on, it became impossible to ignore how differently she treated me and my sister. Like when we'd go back to school shopping, my sister would get 5 new outfits, while I'd get told to make do with last year's clothes. Or at dinner, she'd always give my sister the bigger piece of chicken or the last cookie. Christmas was the worst. My sister would get a pile of presents, while I'd get maybe 1 or 2 things. "Mom, can I join the school band?" I asked once, excited about learning to play the flute. "Oh, honey, we just can't afford instrument rental right now," she said. But the very next week, when my sister mentioned wanting to take dance classes, Mom signed her up immediately. "Of course, sweetie, we need to nurture your talents." Even with simple things, like when we'd both ask for help with homework, Mom would drop everything to help my sister while telling me to figure it out on my own. Or when we'd both achieve something at school, my sister would get taken out for ice cream for getting a B, while my straight A's barely got a good job. The weird thing was, I learned to live with it. Maybe because my sister was so different from Mom. She'd always try to share her new things with me or stick up for me when she could. That's what made it bearable, I guess, knowing that even if Mom played favorites, my sister never did. We stayed close despite everything. I loved watching her practice her dance routines, and she'd sit and listen to me play the cheap plastic recorder I bought with my allowance money since I couldn't join band. We were a team, me and her, no matter what Mom did or said. I was 16 when my sister turned 11, and that's when everything changed again. What started as routine blood work during a regular checkup turned into our worst nightmare. Sarah was diagnosed with kidney failure. I still remember sitting in the sterile hospital waiting room while the doctor explained everything to Mom. The words felt like they were coming from underwater: chronic kidney disease, treatment options, long-term care plans. Sarah, my vibrant little sister who loved to dance and could make anyone smile, was suddenly a patient. The diagnosis brought us even closer together. While Mom spent hours researching treatments and talking to doctors, I'd sit with Sarah during her appointments, playing card games and making up silly stories to distract her. We'd laugh together about the awful hospital food and make plans for all the things we'd do once she felt better. Mom barely noticed I was there. She'd spend hours discussing Sarah's treatment with the doctors, completely forgetting I was in the room. When she did acknowledge me, it was usually just to send me to get something for Sarah or to tell me to be quieter. But I understood, Sarah was sick, she needed the attention more than I did. Before I knew it, I was 18 and graduating high school. My grades were good enough to get me a partial scholarship to a college in another state. Grandma and Grandpa stepped in again, offering to cover the rest of my tuition and expenses. Mom barely made it to the ceremony. She was late because Sarah had a doctor's appointment that morning. She didn't even stay for pictures, rushing off to get Sarah to another appointment. But again, I couldn't blame her. Sarah's health had to come first. College was like stepping into another world. Suddenly, I was hundreds of miles away from the family drama, making new friends, taking interesting classes, and finally feeling like I could breathe. I called Sarah and my grandparents regularly, sharing stories about my classes and campus life. Sarah would tell me about her treatments and how she was feeling, while Grandma and Grandpa kept me updated on everything happening at home. Mom rarely called. When she did, it was usually to tell me about Sarah's latest test results or to remind me to call my sister more often. She never asked about my classes or how I was doing. But that was okay, I was used to it by now. I was in the middle of my junior year when everything fell apart. It was just after midnight when my phone rang, Mom's number lighting up the screen. My stomach dropped, she never called this late. Amy? Her voice was raw, hysterical. Sarah's in the hospital. Her kidneys, they've completely failed. She's on a hemodialysis machine. I could hear her crying through the phone. You need to come home right now. The next morning was a blur of emails to professors and rushed packing. I managed to get a leave of absence approved and booked a train ticket home. As the landscape rushed past my window, all I could think about was Sarah, lying in a hospital bed, waiting for me to come home. Mom was waiting for me at the train station, pacing back and forth on the platform. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled, and there were dark circles under her eyes. As soon as she saw me, she grabbed my arm and started pulling me toward the parking lot. The entire car ride home was filled with Mom's endless stream of words about Sarah's condition. How pale she looked during the procedures. How much weight she'd lost. How she could barely eat because the medications made her nauseated. How the needles left bruises on her arms. Each detail felt like a knife twisting in my gut. She's so weak, Amy, Mom kept saying, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. My baby is suffering so much. The hemodialysis is keeping her alive, but it's not a solution. She needs a real kidney, she needs. Mom suddenly fell silent as we pulled into our driveway. She turned off the engine, but didn't get out of the car. Instead, she turned to face me, and I saw something change in her expression. The worried, tearful look was replaced by something harder, colder. You can save her, she said, her voice suddenly stern and commanding, you must give her your kidney. I sat there, frozen. It wasn't the suggestion that shocked me, of course I'd considered the possibility of being a donor. It was the way she said it, like she was ordering me to hand over an object that belonged to her. Mom, I said carefully, what about the risks? What would happen to my health if I... She cut me off with a harsh laugh. Your health? Sarah's life and health are more important than yours. How can you even think about yourself at a time like this? The cruelty of her words hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I stumbled out of the car and ran into the house, tears already streaming down my face. Behind me, I could hear Mom shouting. I locked myself in my old bedroom and collapsed onto the bed. I cried all night, muffling my sobs in my pillow so Mom wouldn't hear them and start yelling again. My mind kept spinning with questions. Did I even have a choice? What would happen to Sarah if I said no? What would happen to me if I said yes? Would Mom ever forgive me if I refused? When I finally came down for breakfast the next morning, Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, calmly drinking her coffee like nothing had happened. She looked up when I walked in, and in a matter-of-fact tone, said, "We need to get you tested as soon as possible to make sure you're a suitable donor. I'll call the hospital today to schedule the appointments." I gripped my coffee mug tightly, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom, I haven't decided yet about giving Sarah my kidney. The silence lasted only a moment before Mom exploded. She slammed her coffee mug down so hard that hot coffee splashed across the table. You haven't decided? She screamed, her face turning red. What is there to decide? Your sister is dying. I flinched as she stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. Mom, please. Don't you mom me, you selfish, heartless girl, she was pacing now, gesturing wildly. You want to kill your sister. You want her to die so you can have all the attention for yourself? She grabbed a dish from the counter and threw it into the sink. The sound of shattering porcelain made me jump. You're going to murder your own sister because you're too selfish to help her. I couldn't take it anymore. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely function, but somehow I managed to run upstairs to my room. I grabbed my still-packed suitcase and stuffed in a few more things from my dresser while Mom continued screaming from downstairs. "You get back here. We're not done talking about this." But I was done. I ran down the stairs, past my raging mother, and out the front door. I could hear her following me, still shouting about how selfish I was, how I was killing my sister, how I was a horrible daughter. I just kept running until I couldn't hear her anymore. My grandparents' house was only a few blocks away. Grandma opened the door before I even finished knocking. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" She pulled me into a hug as I burst into tears again. Grandpa appeared behind her, his face concerned. They sat me down in their cozy living room, the same room where we'd spent so many happy moments as a family. Grandma made hot chocolate, not the instant kind, but real hot chocolate with melted chocolate and warm milk, just like she used to make when I was little. Through tears and shaking hands wrapped around the warm mug, I told them everything. About Mom's demand for my kidney, her cruel words, her rage when I said I needed time to think. "Of course we knew about Sarah's condition," Grandpa said softly. "We'd been helping with her medical bills. But this," he shook his head. "Sweetheart," Grandma took my hand, "this has to be your decision. Nobody, not even your mother, has the right to demand something like this from you. It's your body, your choice." My phone kept buzzing in my pocket. Mom's name flashed on the screen over and over. "Get tested immediately. Your sister needs you. Stop being so selfish. I can't believe you're doing this to your own sister." I turned off my phone. The next morning, we were sitting at breakfast when we heard the front door slam open. Mom burst into the dining room like a hurricane, her hair wild, her eyes blazing. "You're coming home right now," she demanded, pointing at me. "We're going to the hospital to get you tested." "She's your daughter too," Grandma said, putting her arm around my shoulders. "You can't force her to give up a kidney. Even for Sarah's sake." "The hell I can't." Mom's voice reached a new pitch of hysteria. "She has to do it. And if she doesn't," she turned to me, her eyes cold and hard. "If you don't do this, you're dead to me. Do you understand? You won't be my daughter anymore." Before anyone could respond, she spun around and stormed out, slamming the door so hard that Grandma's china cabinet rattled. The sound of her car engine revving and tires screeching on pavement echoed through the sudden silence. That afternoon, I decided to visit Sarah in the hospital. The nurse at the station handed me a surgical mask, making me sanitize my hands thoroughly before leading me to Sarah's room. Walking into that sterile hospital room was like stepping into another world. The steady beep of monitors filled the air, and tubes seemed to connect my sister to every machine imaginable. Sarah looked so small in that big hospital bed, but her face lit up when she saw me. "Amy," her voice was weak, but her smile was as bright as ever. "You came." I carefully sat in the chair beside her bed, trying not to disturb any of the tubes or wires. "Of course I came, Squirt. Someone has to make sure you're not driving the nurses crazy." We sat there for a while, talking about nothing and everything, her favorite nurse, my college classes, the terrible hospital food. Then her expression turned serious. "Mom told me," she said quietly, "about asking you to be my donor." I felt my throat tighten. "Sarah." "No, listen," she reached for my hand, her fingers cold against mine. "I would never ask you to do that. It has to be your choice, Amy. Only yours." Tears welled up in my eyes as I squeezed her hand. Here she was, hooked up to machines, fighting for her life, and still thinking about my feelings. While Mom was at home screaming about my selfishness, Sarah was protecting my right to choose. Looking at her lying there, so brave and so sick, I made my decision. "I want to get tested," I said, "not because Mom's forcing me, but because I want to know if I can help." When Mom found out about my decision to get tested, it was like the past few days never happened. She rushed to hug me, crying and saying, "You're doing the right thing, Amy, the right thing." I moved back home from my grandparents' house, and over the next few weeks, I underwent test after test. Blood draws, tissue typing, psychological evaluations, the works. Mom was suddenly sweet as pie, making my favorite meals and asking about my day. It was like having the mother I'd always wanted, but somehow that made it even worse. Finally, after what felt like endless waiting, the doctor called us in to discuss the results. Mom and I sat in his office, the desk between us covered with papers and test results. He adjusted his glasses, looking uncomfortable. "I'm afraid I have some unexpected news," he began, shuffling through the papers. "According to these tests, Amy cannot be a donor for Sarah." Mom leaned forward. "What? Why not? We can do more tests." "It's not about more tests," the doctor interrupted gently. "The issue is, well, the degree of kinship between Amy and Sarah. It's not sufficient for a transplant." I sat there in the doctor's office, trying to make sense of his words. The room seemed to be spinning slightly. "I don't understand," I said slowly. "What exactly do you mean by degree of kinship? Can you explain?" The doctor cleared his throat, glancing between Mom and me. "Well, the genetic markers in your blood work show that you and Sarah are not full siblings. You share only one parent in common." I turned to look at Mom. She had gone completely white, her hands gripping the arms of her chair so tightly that her knuckles matched her face. "Mom," my voice came out as barely a whisper. "What's he talking about? How is this possible?" She jumped to her feet so quickly that her chair almost fell over. "This doesn't matter, none of this matters, we'll find another donor." Before either of us could say anything else, she bolted from the office, letting the door slam behind her. The doctor waited a moment before speaking again, his voice gentle. "Ms. Mitchell, the tests show that while you and Sarah share the same mother, you have different fathers. Your sister's biological father is not the same man who raised you." The words hit me like a physical blow. Different fathers. My sister's biological father isn't my father. Mom had cheated on Dad, had an affair, got pregnant with Sarah while married to my father. The drive home was a blur. I don't even remember getting in my car or navigating the familiar streets. When I walked into the house, I found Mom sitting at the kitchen table, a bottle of cognac and a half-empty glass in front of her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice shaking, "about how you cheated on Dad, about how you betrayed him." She took another swig from her glass, not even bothering to look at me. "It's none of your business. And anyway, what difference does it make now? You're useless, you can't even help your sister." I stared at her in disbelief. "My business? Dad was my father. And you cheated on him. You had an affair and got pregnant with Sarah. This is all your fault. If you hadn't cheated, if Sarah had the same father as me, I could have helped her." The sound of the slap echoed through the kitchen before I even registered that Mom had moved. My cheek burned where her hand had struck me, and I stood frozen, watching as she stormed up the stairs to my room. She came back moments later with my suitcase, the one I'd barely unpacked after moving back from my grandparents, and threw it at my feet. "Get out," she screamed, her words slightly slurred from the cognac. "I never loved you anyway. It should have been you. You should have been the one who got sick, not my precious Sarah." I stood there, my hand still pressed against my stinging cheek, as her words sank in. Never loved me, should have been me. The truth I'd always suspected, finally spoken out loud. Without a word, I picked up my suitcase. Mom was still screaming, but her words had become meaningless noise. I walked out the front door, pulling it closed behind me, cutting off her voice mid-rant. I found myself back at my grandparents' doorstep, tears streaming down my face. This time when Grandma opened the door, I couldn't even speak, I just fell into her arms, sobbing. They sat me down in the kitchen, and through hiccuping breaths, I told them everything. About the test results. About Mom's affair. About how Sarah wasn't really Dad's daughter. About Mom's cruel words and how she'd thrown me out. Grandma's face grew harder with each word, while Grandpa sat completely still, his coffee growing cold in front of him. When I finished, the silence in the kitchen was deafening. We'll handle this, Grandma said firmly, reaching for the phone. First thing tomorrow morning. And she did. I was eating breakfast the next day when Grandma made the call, putting it on speaker so Grandpa could hear too. Marie, this is Ellen. Grandma's voice was cold as ice. Pack your things. You need to leave the house. Mom's voice crackled through the speaker. What? What are you talking about? That house belongs to us, Grandma continued. And you who betrayed our son, who's been cruel to our granddaughter, you have no right to live there anymore. It was just one time. Mom's voice rose to a shriek. It was an accident. I loved John, I really did. And I love Amy too, you have to believe me. One time was enough, Grandpa spoke up, his voice trembling with anger. One time destroyed this family. Please, Mom was crying now. Where will we go? What about Sarah's treatment? We could stop paying for Sarah's treatment, Grandma said coldly. She's not our granddaughter, after all. I felt my heart stop for a moment, but Grandma continued. But we won't do that. We're not cruel like you, Marie. We'll continue to pay for Sarah's treatment because she's an innocent child who needs help. But you need to leave that house, find your own place to live, and get a job. It's long past time you stood on your own 2 feet. The next day, I went to visit Sarah in the hospital. She looked even smaller than before, if that was possible. When I walked in, she gave me a weak smile. Hey, she said softly. So I guess we know why you can't be my donor now. Different dads, who would have thought, right? Listen to me, I squeezed her hand, nothing has changed between us. You're still my sister, and I still love you. Grandma and Grandpa are going to keep helping with your treatment. We're going to find you a donor, Sarah. I promise. Really? Her eyes filled with tears. Even though I'm not really there? Really, I cut her off firmly. Family isn't just about blood. It's about love. And you're my sister, no matter what any test says. It's been 3 months since everything fell apart, though sometimes it feels like years. I'm back at college now, trying to focus on my studies and build some kind of normal life. Mom is still living in the house. Grandma and Grandpa decided to let her stay, not for her sake, but for Sarah's. She needs someone to drive her to dialysis, Grandpa explained when I questioned their decision. And someone needs to be there when she's not feeling well. Sarah goes to the hemodialysis center 3 times a week. It's hard on her body, but she's tough. We talk on the phone almost every day, and she never complains, though I can sometimes hear the exhaustion in her voice. But last week, everything changed. Sarah called me, and for the first time in months, she sounded excited. Amy, she practically shouted into the phone. They found a donor. The doctor just told us. There was this man, he died in an accident, but he was an organ donor. And I'm a match. She was crying now, happy tears. I'm getting a kidney, Amy. I might actually get better. I found myself crying too, relief washing over me like a wave. After everything we'd been through, finally some good news. When I want to see Sarah now, I arrange it through our grandparents. She comes to their house, and we spend time together there, away from Mom. Grandma makes us hot chocolate, the real kind, still, and Grandpa tells terrible jokes that make Sarah laugh until she has to hold her sides. They treat Sarah with such kindness, even though they know she's not their biological granddaughter. She's just a child, Grandma said once, when I mentioned it. None of this is her fault. They did pull me aside last week, though, after Sarah had gone home. We need to talk about something serious, Grandpa said, sitting me down in his study. About our will. I started to protest, but he held up his hand. You need to know this. Everything we have, the house, our savings, everything, it's going to you, Amy. Only you. But Sarah, I began. Sarah isn't our granddaughter, Grandma said gently. However, once it's yours, you can do whatever you want with it. If you want to share with your sister, that will be your choice. I understood what they were really saying. They were punishing Mom, not Sarah. Speaking of Mom, she called me yesterday. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Amy, her voice was small, hesitant, I need your help. Could you talk to your grandparents? Ask them to let me stay in the house permanently? I know if you ask them. No, my voice was firm, final. Please, Amy, I'm your mother, I know I made mistakes, but... Mistakes? I cut her off. You cheated on Dad, you lied to everyone for years, you treated me like I was nothing, you never loved me. That's not true. I hung up the phone. Maybe someday I'll forgive her. Maybe someday the pain of her betrayal won't feel so sharp. But not today. Today, I'm focusing on Sarah's upcoming transplant, on my studies, on building a life that isn't defined by my mother's choices.
I'm going to remarry my 18-year-old girlfriend. You're in the way, so disappear. What? So, you want a divorce, is that it? Exactly. What is that? Don't joke about things like that. You guys have always treated me carelessly, haven't you? It's too late to get flustered after I've brought up divorce. What? I'm not flustered at all. I'm actually mad that you brought up divorce to Mom first. Don't raise your voice so much. How can you stay so calm? I'm angry too. Got it. Shall we get divorced then? Oh, you'll grant me a divorce? That makes things easier. What? Mom? Is that okay? After years of juggling child-rearing, shuttling kids to extracurricular activities, and caring for my father-in-law, my husband suddenly proposed a divorce. When I casually agreed to the divorce and mentioned it too lightly, my eldest daughter shouted in surprise. Ethan was alone, celebrating with a fist pump. My eldest daughter seemed not to understand my words, but this is fine. If everything goes as I expect, everything should resolve smoothly. In reality, a month after I blocked his calls, my ex-husband came to our house. I am a 37-year-old part-time worker. I married Ethan, who is 2 years older than me, when I was 24 due to a shotgun wedding, and we were blessed with 2 children after the marriage. Our daughter Kristen, who turns 13 this year, has started middle school, and our son Ted has turned 6 and started elementary school. With the children reaching middle and elementary school ages, childcare should have become a bit easier, but the birth of our second son, Sean, 2 years ago has kept us in a constant state of busyness. However, I have strong support, so I can manage household chores, childcare, and work. Ted. You need your gym bag today, right? Prepare it yourself. I'll prepare it after breakfast. That's what you said last week, but you forgot it, didn't you? Prepare it first. Seeing me always busy, my eldest daughter naturally started to support me. She is already showing the temperament of a tough mother, even more maternal than I am. I rely on my eldest daughter's help with childcare, which honestly helps a lot. However, I also feel pathetic having to rely on a child for help with childcare. Still, I depend on my eldest daughter because I am also caring for George, my father-in-law. Megan, I'm sorry, but I need to go to the toilet. Can you take me? Understood. Let's get up slowly then. I'm always sorry about this. My father-in-law always looks apologetic towards me. However, I have never considered him a burden. Though he requires care, he is only weak in the legs and can manage daily activities with some support. Thus, it's more about support than care, really. George is 70, and my mother-in-law Dorothy is 68. Since my mother-in-law alone can't fully support him, our family has been living with my in-laws for about 3 years now. Living with my in-laws is often fraught with trouble, but fortunately, it hasn't involved me much. Welcome home, thanks for the hard work, Bert. Lunch is ready, you'll eat, right? Thank you. I appreciate it, as always. We're the ones being helped here, don't worry about it. Oh, by the way, I fixed a button on Ted's uniform that had come off. I did it without asking. I hope that was okay? You fixed it? That's very helpful, thank you. My mother-in-law supports us with housework and childcare. Also, my father-in-law entertains my eldest son when he returns from school. When I was pregnant with my second son, they helped me a lot. Though we came to my in-laws to support them, it feels like the roles have completely reversed. Therefore, I feel indebted to my in-laws, but they always say not to worry about it. I'm always causing trouble, I know. Living with your husband's parents must be tough, but you accepted us. I'm truly grateful. That's right. I couldn't support him alone. Besides, we're happy to live with our grandchildren. You might think we're helping you with housework and childcare, but that's not it. We do it because we enjoy it, and it brings us joy. After 3 years of living with my in-laws, I've been leading a busy yet enjoyable life. However, there is one thing I'm concerned about. In these 3 years, my husband's attitude has gradually changed. One morning, it was a usual scene. You didn't hand over the notice from yesterday, did you? I always tell you to make sure to hand it over. I just forgot yesterday. Megan. I'm sorry, but could you buy some sewing thread at the dollar store on your way back from work today? Understood. Could you also buy a new nail clipper? The one we're using now is getting dull. This ordinary scene seems to annoy my husband. You have it good, getting help with the housework and childcare. How can you say that? You don't help, so you wouldn't know, but household chores and childcare are tough. Plus, I even have to go to work. Work. It's just an easy part-time job, isn't it? What's the matter with you? Did something bad happen at work? What? Dad, are you taking it out on us? It's not like that. Some people handle housework, childcare, and work all by themselves, so I just mean don't be too spoiled. After placing his toast back on the plate, my husband left for work. I get complaints from my husband. He seems displeased that I receive help from my eldest daughter and my in-laws. However, since my eldest daughter and in-laws are on my side, my husband often retreats in a bad mood. Feeling uncomfortable without allies, he has started to reduce his time at home. Welcome home. You're late again today. What about dinner? I don't need it. I'm just going to take a shower and go to sleep. My husband comes home late and has started to go out alone on weekends. He sulks because he doesn't have the family's support, although it's his own attitude that causes this, making it feel like a fourth child has emerged. But my husband is almost 40, an adult, and a father. I can't deal with him sulking like a child forever. Hey, even if you don't help with the housework, could you at least help a little with the childcare? Ask your mom and them for that. Kristen has started going to cram school, right? I have to pick her up because she gets home late. And Ted has joined a soccer club, hasn't he? Sometimes on weekends, I have to take him a bit far for practice games. I can't really ask your mother to do the driving, can I? I'm not doing any driving around. Why should I have to drive the kids around at night or on weekends when I'm tired from work? You have a part-time job and you can drive, so you should do it. If I take the kids to and from their activities, I won't be able to do anything at home. I'll have to rely even more on your parents. I understand you're tired from work, but please, help a little. You said you'd help when the kids started their activities, didn't you? I said I'd pay for it. If you can't drive them, then make them quit their activities. My husband's dissatisfaction is directed not only at me, but also at the children who don't take his side. It seems the biggest child of all requires the most attention. Since I can't make the children quit their activities, I decided to handle their transportation myself. But I can't rely on my in-laws any more than I already do. So, I try to keep from adding to their burden as much as possible. However, the driving, taking 1 to 2 hours each time, inevitably cuts into the efficiency of my housework and childcare. To make up for the lost efficiency, I've started waking up early and cutting back on sleep to get housework and childcare done. I use every spare moment for housework and childcare. Exhausted from non-stop housework and childcare, I also go to my part-time job and continue to support my father-in-law. This unsustainable effort can't continue forever. Having reached my limit just on grit, I consulted my husband again, but he flatly refused, saying, "What? I told you I wouldn't do the driving." So, I continue to transport the children, hiding my fatigue. I'm home. Welcome back. Well done, Megan. Are you okay? Isn't the driving tough? I'm fine. I'll get dinner ready. I force a smile to hide my fatigue. I can't rely on my in-laws any more than I already do. I know I should openly rely on my in-laws, but I just can't bring myself to do it. Unfortunately, bad things seem to happen one after another. My father-in-law suddenly passed away from acute myocardial infarction. At the hospital, my daughter, my mother-in-law, and I cried as we looked at my father-in-law, who had passed away in his sleep. My son was teary-eyed and looked down in silence. It's understandable that 2-year-old Sean doesn't grasp the situation and looks confused. However, why is my husband grinning? Well, Dad was over 70, so it can't be helped, right? No more needing to help with the toilet or the bath. Let's try to think positively. My husband is not the kind of person who makes jokes to cheer us up. He probably means what he said. Even if it were a joke, it would be in extremely poor taste. But right now, sadness overwhelmingly outweighs anger. So, we ignored my husband and mourned the loss of my father-in-law. We better get started on the funeral arrangements. Our reaction probably wasn't what he had hoped for. He left the hospital room with a dismissive remark, increasing the emotional distance between us and him. "I'll be late again today, so I don't need dinner." 2 years after my father-in-law's death, my husband continues to do as he pleases, still not helping with housework or childcare, and I'm still doing the driving for our 2 children and now also for Sean to kindergarten. Moreover, he comes home later than before, sometimes doesn't return on weekends, and has become even more reckless with money. Hey! Did you use the household money again? So what? Most of that money is what I earned, isn't it? We have 3 kids, you know? We still need a lot of money, so stop wasting it. Shut up. You should just keep quiet and take care of the house. Our relationship had already cooled off. But we haven't divorced yet, partly because of the children, but also because I'm worried about my mother-in-law. I'm sorry that Ethan keeps causing trouble. You can dump him anytime, you know? My mother-in-law sometimes tells me it's okay to divorce, but if we were to divorce, my husband and mother-in-law would be left alone. I'm worried about leaving my kindly mother-in-law alone with such a husband. So, whenever she brings up divorce, I just laugh it off. What are you saying? Even if my relationship with my husband has cooled, having 3 adorable children and a kind mother-in-law is enough for me. However, the time to end such a life has come. My mother-in-law has suffered a stroke. Though her life was saved, my mother-in-law developed cognitive impairment as a result of her condition. The view from that mountain is really beautiful. I really love that view. I went there last week. Wow, really? I'd like to see that view from the mountain someday too. My eldest daughter listens to her grandmother with a smile. However, my mother-in-law did not go to the mountain last week. Due to her cognitive impairment from the stroke, she also has memory issues and talks about trips from years ago as if they happened recently. Moreover, she repeats the same story multiple times. My eldest daughter continues to listen with a smile until my mother-in-law is satisfied. Did Mom finish her meal? It took a long time today. Yeah. But she wasn't slow eating, she was just caught up in her stories. I see. That's a sign she's still energetic. We need to keep her healthy. Right. But I'm a bit worried. Earlier, she reached out her hand to a completely different place from her spoon. To keep her healthy, we need to cover for her like that. I was worried whether I could provide enough support when my mother-in-law fell, but my eldest daughter helps with the caregiving and the household chores, so we're managing. Seeing how my daughter supports me, my eldest son has also started to take care of his younger brother. I've come to realize that this is what it means to support each other as a family. It's just unfortunate that my husband's cooperation isn't part of this. Why doesn't that guy help with anything around the house? Even Ted is looking after Sean. Don't call your father that guy. Father? Can someone like him even be called a father? It's no wonder my eldest daughter is exasperated with her husband. Well, I think it's much better than being bothered by him. My husband still comes home late and goes out on weekends. It's a problem that he spends money, but I'm not interested in what he does outside. So, it's better for me if he just stays uninvolved. Thinking this, I had been ignoring my husband, but about 6 months after my mother-in-law's fall, my husband dropped a huge bombshell on our family. I'm going to remarry my 18-year-old girlfriend. You're in the way, so disappear. What? My husband, returning home after the kids had gone to bed, suddenly confronted me with a divorce. I was speechless, my mind went blank. Though I've been managing household chores, childcare, and work with some help since coming to live with my in-laws. I also took care of my father-in-law, and now I'm caring for my mother-in-law. Do I really have to be confronted with a divorce from a husband who hasn't helped with the house or his parents at all? And to remarry an 18-year-old? No matter how hard I try, I can't understand what my husband is saying. So, you want a divorce, is that it? Exactly. What is that? Don't joke about things like that. I thought she was asleep, but my eldest daughter had been awake. She couldn't stand our conversation and burst in. You guys have always treated me carelessly, haven't you? It's too late to get flustered after I've brought up divorce. What? I'm not flustered at all. I'm actually mad that you brought up divorce to Mom first. My eldest daughter's anger was so strong, I couldn't even talk to my husband. It's nice that she's angry for me, but this could wake up my sons. Kristen, don't raise your voice so much. How can you stay so calm? I'm angry too. First, let your father and I talk, so go back to your room. No. I'm staying here. It seemed my eldest daughter had no intention of leaving the room. She quieted down but crossed her arms and continued to glare at her father without moving. It's not ideal to discuss divorce in front of the kids, but it can't be helped. So, you've been coming home late and going out on weekends for that girlfriend, huh? Yes. We've been together for about a year now. She's a girl who works part-time at my regular pub. Unlike you, she's friendly and kind. That should be called an affair, not a relationship, but that's not the point I want to emphasize. She's still 18, right? Are her parents okay with this? Her parents are strongly opposed. If she marries me, they're going to disown her. How can you marry without her parents' consent? We don't need her parents' consent. We can get married. That's why we've been patiently dating this past year. It's not about the law, but about human connections and decency. I was at a loss, unable to understand my husband. Looking at my daughter's face, she had an expression of complete disbelief. So, her parents don't agree, but you've confirmed her feelings, right? Yes, of course. We love each other. I didn't need to hear that. I don't want her to say too much in front of my daughter. At this point, I don't care about the divorce or the affair. What worries me is my mother-in-law after the divorce. I looked at a photo of my mother-in-law on a shelf in the corner of the room. It was taken when she was healthy, smiling on a mountain hike. Looking at my mother-in-law's smiling face, I remembered she had always said I could leave my husband anytime. Understood. So, shall we get divorced? Oh, you'll grant me a divorce? That makes things easier. What? Mom? Is that okay? My casual agreement to the divorce and my light mention of it shocked my eldest daughter. Ethan was alone, celebrating with a fist pump. I can't accept this. This is fine. What's fine? This is fine. I repeated the same words, trying to communicate with my eyes to my eldest daughter that I wasn't just accepting the divorce. It seemed my feelings had reached her, who had been with me as family. However, my husband, who hadn't been part of us as a family, failed to notice the silent conversation between my daughter and me. If everything goes as I expect, everything should work out smoothly. The decision to divorce is made, but there are children involved, and we need to discuss the details. Therefore, I cannot leave the house immediately. Of course, it's okay for me to take the children, right? Obviously. Better take them away. They're just a nuisance. Understood. But it's impossible to just take the children and leave immediately, so wait a bit. Then, you can stay here until you find a place to move. I'll be spending time with my girlfriend. But get out in 2 weeks. I can't have you sticking around forever. As my husband left the house happily, my eldest daughter looked at me anxiously. It's okay. Do you think a person like that can be happy? Surely, your grandfather in heaven will punish him. I tried to alleviate my daughter's anxiety with a smile. Seeing me smile, she too smiled back, reassured. The next day, I reported the divorce to my mother-in-law. Mother, I'm sorry. I've decided to get a divorce. It's okay. I'm sorry for all the trouble up to now. Though the conversation went on, my mother-in-law probably didn't fully grasp its meaning. Yet, her words were comforting to me. 2 weeks later, I left the house with my 3 children. The place we moved to wasn't far from my in-laws. This was to avoid changing the children's schools and to continue my part-time job, but there was another reason as well. The divorce proceeded smoothly as I didn't press the issue of the affair. I thought it more important to quickly sever ties with my husband and ensure a smooth transition to receiving child support, rather than arguing about compensation. However, in return for not fussing about the affair, I took most of our savings and the car. My ex-husband, eager to start his life with his 18-year-old new wife, accepted these terms without fully understanding how much it would cost him later. Mom, you think about 2 months? I think about 1 month. You think he lacks that much persistence? Surely he can last about 2 months, right? I explained to my daughter why I divorced her father so easily. Satisfied with my explanation, she looked forward to that time. A month after the divorce, my ex-husband called my smartphone. See, just about a month. Not yet. I don't think he's been pushed to his limit yet. Let's wait and see. After that, my ex-husband started bombarding me with calls. At night, he would call every 10 minutes. It became impossible to relax at home, so I blocked his number. Since I had told him where we lived, there wouldn't be a problem if he couldn't reach me by phone. When he was driven to his limit, he would surely come to the house. A month after blocking him, my ex-husband finally showed up at our house. Please. Come back. I was wrong. Through the intercom, my husband pleaded loudly for help. It was night, and to avoid bad rumors in the neighborhood, I reluctantly let him into the house to talk. I sent the younger son to another room with the eldest, and I listened to my ex-husband's story with my daughter. Well, it was probably just as I had expected. I have an idea of what happened, but could you explain it anyway? After you guys left, I started living with my remarriage partner and my mom, just the 3 of us at her home. But the new wife couldn't handle taking care of mom and gave up, right? Yes. I didn't think she'd give up so easily, even middle schooler Kristen could do it. You know. It's obvious, isn't it? Taking care of parents isn't about persistence. Kristen could take care of mom because we've always lived as a family. I could take care of your parents because they were kind to me and felt like my real parents. Did you really think that just getting married and saying, "This is your mother-in-law, take care of her," would work? That is. You probably pushed all the housework onto her too, right? Anyone would hate that. Especially an 18-year-old. So? Did you divorce her already? No, we hadn't registered the marriage yet, we were planning to on our anniversary. Lucky for her, then. She dumped you easily, huh? I've been there, and I know that young women can find older men attractive. I bet the 18-year-old new wife was serious about marrying my ex-husband. Otherwise, she wouldn't have fought her parents' opposition and moved in with my in-laws. She must have been informed about my mother-in-law beforehand. However, the reality of married life and caregiving must have been much harder than she imagined. For an 18-year-old with little life experience, it would be tough to overcome such trials. If they were to make their married life successful, my ex-husband's support would have been crucial, but he helped with nothing. Moreover, it's dubious whether he even explained the situation adequately or prepared her appropriately. But she cut ties with her parents to marry you, right? How are you planning to take responsibility? Her parents said they'd cut ties, but they didn't in the end. Now she's being sheltered by them. Sheltered? What do you mean? Did you? Of course, I went after her when she left the house. But her parents said, "Our daughter is scared, so don't come anymore." This is a marital issue. It's natural for us to discuss it together. Yet, they say if I persist, they'll consult a lawyer. A 40-year-old man pressuring an 18-year-old girl is scary enough. If a daughter runs back home from a man, it's natural for parents to protect her. Moreover, the mention of a lawyer instead of the police shows how serious her parents are. The police cannot act without evidence of harm, but involving a lawyer might make it easier for them to intervene, and even if the police do not act, a civil lawsuit might be possible. Moreover, although people may speak of cutting ties, family bonds are not so easily severed. I cannot imagine ever cutting ties with my children, no matter what they do. However, my ex-husband seems to be someone who can imagine cutting ties with his children. I don't care about you and your new wife anymore. But you came here alone, is Grandma okay? Mom's already asleep, so she's fine. I've also installed a monitoring camera. Grandma is alone at home? I can't believe it. Give me the keys now. My eldest daughter snatched the keys from my ex-husband and rushed to our mother-in-law's place without stopping. What are you thinking? I'm at my limit. Whatever I do, you ask about Megan? About Kristen? About Ted and Sean? Suddenly she starts saying things that make no sense. My wife ran away, and I can't take care of Mom alone anymore. Please, come back. The reason Mom doesn't rely on you and calls our names instead, is it because you couldn't be the family she needed? Being related by blood doesn't make you family. If you were really family, you'd understand what Mom wants to say. Kristen and I have never thought Mom was saying nonsense. Realizing how foolish his actions had been, my ex-husband hung his head and fell silent. If my ex-husband has come to regret his past actions, that's an ideal turn of events for me. I handed him a brochure I had prepared. I have no intention of remarrying you. But you can't take care of Mom, can you? How about we get her into a care facility? I suggested to my ex-husband that we place our mother-in-law in a nearby care facility. It would be much safer for her to be there than with my incapable ex-husband. Additionally, visiting her at the facility would allow us to see her without having to meet my ex-husband. The brochure I handed to my ex-husband was for a facility near our house. We hadn't moved too far away after leaving the marital home, partly for this reason. Okay. I'll do that. With this, I achieved my goal. I managed to divorce and ensure that my children and I could see my mother-in-law whenever we wanted. Shall we head to your house then? What does that mean? My ex-husband, mistakenly thinking that his remorse and regret had moved me, hoped for a positive response. Don't misunderstand. I'm going to pick up Kristen. She rushed out suddenly earlier, and since it's night, even if it's close by, it's natural for me to go pick up our child, right? Realizing he had been mistaken, my ex-husband's shoulders fell. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. It had been 2 months since we last visited the family home, but I didn't meet with my mother-in-law. I simply picked up my eldest daughter and returned home. We can meet with my mother-in-law anytime now, so hearing from my daughter was enough for now. Grandma said she went to the mountain yesterday too. She's still so lively, huh? It's not fair that only sister gets to see Grandma. I wanted to see Grandma too. It's late now, so be patient. We'll be able to see Grandma from now on. It looks like your plan worked, didn't it? Yes, this way I managed to separate that man from Grandma. As I drove home, thinking about being able to meet Grandma again made me happy, and I found myself humming a tune. Later, my mother-in-law was admitted to the care facility. Mother, how are you feeling? Any changes? Yes, I've been feeling quite well recently. According to the staff at the facility, my mother-in-law had been somber and quiet right after admission. However, as my children and I began visiting, her mood lightened and she started talking more. With my mother-in-law in the facility, my ex-husband was left living alone at the family home. It seems he finally gave up on the new wife after her parents threatened to consult a lawyer. I'm just relieved he didn't become a stalker. However, the girl must have been quite frightened. While I understand his desire not to lose a young wife, as an adult, he should have known when to step back. Later, I learned that around the time my ex-husband started complaining and behaving strangely, he had made a major mistake at work. It was a big enough blunder to push him into a less influential position at his company. Feeling ostracized at work while I managed home affairs smoothly with family support apparently didn't sit well with him. As he began to complain, finding no allies at home either, he ended up relying on a teenager. Being relied upon by a younger person probably made him feel validated. Such childish reasons indeed. Also, it seems that not only his wife but also his mother had forsaken him. Nice to meet you. It's a lovely day, isn't it? Despite clearly remembering us, it seems my mother-in-law has forgotten that my ex-husband is her son. His childlike behavior led to our divorce and ultimately left him truly alone. Now alone, my ex-husband's mental state worsened, and he continued to make mistakes at work. One mistake led to another, resulting in demotion and pay cuts. Given his mental state, he probably should take a break from work, but he can't afford to. Since I took most of our savings in exchange for not fussing about the affair during our divorce, he's left without much money. Still, he needs to work to pay the child support for our 3 kids and the care facility fees for my mother-in-law. Being without support is a tough situation. To support the 3 kids, I found a job. Sean is still small, but Kristen and Ted help look after him. Having real support is truly reassuring.
Exiting the OBGYN were Jeff, my husband, and an unfamiliar woman. No way. Jeff, you were having an affair? I had witnessed my husband's affair. Moreover, it seemed his mistress was pregnant. In a panic, I approached them to ask what was going on, and she said, "I'm pregnant with your husband's child. Please divorce him quickly." Despite being in front of his real wife, she was utterly unfazed and selfishly asked for a separation. I was dumbfounded by Tracy's audacity. There was no point in staying married to Jeff under these circumstances. "All right," I said, "if that's what Jeff wants, let's do it." Then the two of them looked at each other, held hands, and began to celebrate. "So, we don't have to hide our trips anymore?"
Yay!
Huh? Trips? Actually, we're going on our honeymoon next week. I was going to lie and say I was on a business trip, but there's no need to sneak around anymore. Their forthrightness may have stemmed from my agreement to divorce. They felt free to say anything in my presence, revealing details I hadn't even asked for. Their selfish behavior continued thereafter. I had told Jeff we needed to talk, but he hadn't returned home in days. Were they planning to talk after returning from their trip? I had thought so until one day. Unbelievable. 33 filled-out divorce papers were mailed to me. Among them were photos of my husband and his mistress together, clearly meant to harass me. They clearly wanted a quick divorce, but why send these during their trip? They didn't give us a chance to talk, just sent these papers unilaterally. Rebecca, nice guts. Be prepared. Something snapped inside me. My name is Rebecca. I'm a nurse at a general hospital. I met Jeff 3 years ago at a friend's wedding. Unlike me, who is shy and not good at conversation, Jeff was the life of the party and stood out among the guests, which piqued my interest. After the reception, everyone moved to the venue for the after party, which was informal. I sat at the far end of an island table with Claire, a high school classmate. Then, Jeff sat down next to me. I hope it's okay, I sat next to you, he said. Despite my introverted panic, he continued to talk to me without hesitation. Do you have a boyfriend? No. Where do you work? Oh, right. How old are you? Are we the same age? He bombarded me with questions. When Jeff's friend noticed my discomfort, he teased Jeff. Dude, you're asking too many questions, she's shocked. His friend's comment made Jeff realize he might have scared me. And he blushed, apologizing, really sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I was just curious. Man, he's been saying how cute you are since the ceremony. He's a good guy, give him your number. I was egged on by Jeff's friend. At that time, I didn't have a boyfriend or anyone I was interested in. So I agreed to exchange contact information with Jeff. When I agreed, Jeff showed a big smile, highlighting his dimples. Thank you. I'll definitely contact you. And he did the next day. Jeff invited me out for a meal. Alone, he seemed less boisterous and more hesitant. Do you have any favorite foods? He mumbled. Jeff was a bit shy, cute with his noticeable dimples. I started to find him adorable. After several dates, our relationship progressed. About 6 months later, Jeff proposed, and we quickly decided to marry. Once married, we moved in together, but I had some concerns. Hey, what about the wedding expenses and the rent? And other costs for living together? I brought it up indirectly, as it was hard to talk about. I work as a nurse and believe my salary is fairly high. However, Jeff works as an office clerk at a manufacturer. My salary and bonuses were significantly higher than his. And I wondered if he might feel uneasy about it. However, Jeff casually said, why not go halves? Right now, I earn less and honestly don't have much saved. But I'll try my best not to lose to you, Rebecca. My worries were unfounded, as Jeff seemed more positive than I expected. But I had another concern. You know, I have night shifts. I come home in the middle of the night or in the morning, and my work hours are irregular. Can you help with the household chores? My job as a nurse means irregular hours. Honestly, it's hard to manage without sharing household chores, which was crucial for me. Household chores. We should do them together, right? If you're okay with a guy cooking. I can cook and do the cleaning and laundry without much hassle. Let's work together. This reassurance was similar to our earlier conversation about salary. Jeff had lived alone before, so he was capable of handling chores without feeling burdened. He eased my fears, and we registered our marriage without any issues. Our friends and both families celebrated our new beginning, and we started our life together. Jeff kept his promise to actively do household chores. After a night shift, I'd return home to find pasta wrapped and waiting in the fridge. The cleaning and laundry were well taken care of. On days I cooked, Jeff would eat heartily, asking for seconds. Delicious. Is there more? On weekends, he would take me out on dates. We lived blissfully, just the two of us. All that was left was for us to have a child, for everything to be perfect. However, conceiving turned out to be more difficult than I had anticipated. Honestly, I had naively assumed that getting pregnant would be easy once we were married. It seems many people might think the same. But reality often proves otherwise. Even after a year of marriage, I had not become pregnant. I was 28 at the time, and I had hoped to have a couple of kids by the age of 30. A desire I had shared with Jeff before we married. However, Jeff didn't seem to be in a hurry, saying, "Let's not rush it." Perhaps he was right, as these things can't be forced. But my concern wasn't just about not rushing. Our intimacy had significantly decreased compared to when we were first married. No matter how much one might say it's out of our hands, without intimacy, there can be no children. Initially, we slept together in the same bedroom. But due to my job, I often came home in the middle of the night, frequently waking Jeff up. Eventually, Jeff suggested I wake up with even the slightest noise. Maybe we should sleep in separate bedrooms? This separation likely also played a role in our difficulty in conceiving. I began to feel somewhat depressed about our chances of having children. Still, our relationship wasn't bad, and I enjoyed my time with Jeff. So I tried not to dwell on it too much. However, 2 years into our marriage, I could feel our happiness beginning to crumble. "You're coming home late again today?"
Yeah.
"I have a drinking party tonight." "I see. What time will you be back?" "Not sure. Probably after midnight." "That's late." "Haven't the drinking parties been a bit too frequent lately?" Lately, Jeff's returns were very late, and his frequency of drinking parties had increased. He was often away on weekends for entertainment. And I felt disappointed about the lack of time we spent together as a couple. However, my husband dismissed my concerns, saying, "Rebecca, you're a woman, you don't understand the importance of these drinking parties. How much the bosses like me can really make a difference at work. Please don't complain about work-related matters." "I'm sorry." "Well, I'm heading out." Seemingly upset by my words, Jeff slammed the front door as he left. The vibration and air pressure from the door closing knocked over a photo frame on the entrance hall table, a picture of us smiling at our wedding. Left alone, I sighed deeply, and slowly set the photo frame upright before heading to work. I understood the importance of workplace relationships. But it wasn't just the late returns. Recently, Jeff's attitude towards me had clearly changed, causing me anxiety. Again, he didn't make dinner. Previously, Jeff would prepare meals before his work to ease my burden when I returned from night shifts. But that had stopped. Eventually, I had to prepare meals myself after a short nap. I also had to point out, "Why haven't you done the laundry?" The laundry basket was overflowing, yet it remained untouched. Today was supposed to be Jeff's turn to clean. What's the big deal? I was busy. It is a big deal. The basket is so full. Where am I supposed to put the clothes I wore today? Oh, stop nagging. If you're going to complain, just do it yourself. Jeff lay on the couch, fiddling with his phone and ignoring me. I ended up doing the laundry myself, as he made no move to help. This way, my household chores burden continued to grow. We had agreed to share household responsibilities before marriage and set rules together. But those rules had gradually fallen apart at Jeff's convenience. He had changed. He was always late due to overtime or drinking parties, and on weekends. He would go out alone, unlike before. He used to be so kind, but now even his tone had become harsher. I dreaded to think it, but a horrible thought crossed my mind: infidelity? No, I mustn't accuse my husband without evidence. I sternly dismissed the thought. But as time passed, Jeff continued to change, and I couldn't help but become suspicious. Hey, what is this? A colored lipstick, obviously for women, fell out of the suit Jeff wore to work. Oh. I bought some lip balm because my lips were dry. But it seems I accidentally picked up a colored one, he said, his eyes darting around nervously. Flustered, he quickly retreated to the bedroom. I'm tired, going to sleep. It was suspicious, but if he said it was a mistake, there was not much I could do. I had to back down this time. However, another day brought a new issue. Several thousands of dollars had been transferred from our joint account for living expenses to Jeff's personal account. Jeff, why is money from our living account being transferred to your account? I overspent this month. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal. Don't use it without asking. We need to save for the future. Another lecture? Sorry, I'll be careful. After saying this, he retreated to his bedroom again. Yet, in the following months, he continued to withdraw money without my consent. Jeff, did you use our house money again? I asked you to stop, didn't I? It doesn't matter. We don't have kids anyway. I almost yelled, that's because you're not interested in having them. But I held back, biting my tongue. It's not just about that. I don't understand why you need to spend $1,000 to $2,000 a month just because we don't have kids. What are you spending it on? Why do I have to explain every penny I spend to you? Jeff snapped back, getting defensive. Even when we're arguing like this, Jeff never puts down his smartphone. He keeps it with him even when going to the bathroom or taking a bath. It's like his wife is not me, but his smartphone. Can't you just put down your phone for once during such times? Look at me and talk. I couldn't help but get emotional too. Enough. You're so annoying. Just let me be. Saying this, he retreated to his room while still looking at his smartphone. He says he wants freedom, but isn't he already doing whatever he wants? Where did the husband I loved go? I haven't seen his dimpled smile, which I loved, in who knows how long. When he's home, he's always irritable. The trace of his kindness has completely vanished. What do I even like about this man anymore? I feel my feelings for Jeff cooling down more and more. I spend my days questioning whether I should divorce him. Then one day, Claire, a friend from nursing school, contacted me. Want to catch up over a meal? It's been a while. Yes. I'd love to. It's been so long, hasn't it? Where should we meet? At your place like usual, or my house? Actually, it'd be better near my workplace this time. Sorry, but could you come here? And how about around 3 p.m.? Claire, though she works in a different hospital, is a nurse like me. She suggested meeting at a cafe near the OBGYN where she works. Usually, when Claire and I meet, we just hang out at one of our homes and have a leisurely meal, but this time was different. Though it struck me as odd to meet at 3 p.m., neither lunch nor dinner time. I didn't dwell on it much since I was looking forward to seeing Claire. On the day I was supposed to meet Claire, I arrived at the designated cafe to find her looking unusually somber. Is something wrong? I asked Claire, sensing her serious mood. After a moment of silence, she spoke heavily. Don't ask anything, just look outside the window for a while. Outside the window, I could clearly see the OBGYN where Claire works. I vaguely understood what she meant, and we both stared out the window in silence for a while. Then, the moment came. As I watched, I saw Jeff, my husband, wrapping his arm around an unfamiliar woman's waist and entering the OBGYN together. The woman next to him appeared to have a slightly swollen belly. I see. Yeah. I kind of had a feeling something was going on. My eyes began to well up with tears, and my grip tightened on my coffee cup. Claire, it's such a nice day today, isn't it? Really warm, and the temperature is just perfect. As I said this, tears started rolling down my cheeks. Rebecca. Claire held my hand. She probably didn't want to know either. That a friend's husband was having an affair. Claire had been at the wedding where my husband and I met and was right there when Jeff first talked to me. So she knew his face and name well. She had seen him come to the OBGYN with another woman and had contacted me. I'm going to head back now. As much as you're my friend, I can't just disclose patient information carelessly. I'm sorry, I can't do more. You should talk to Jeff. Claire, thank you so much. I'll talk to him. No worries. Call me if you need anything, okay? I'm always on your side. And don't let him see you crying. Wipe your tears before you go. Saying this, Claire wiped my tears with her handkerchief. She had always been like an older sister to me. I thanked her again and waited outside the OBGYN for them to come out. After a while, when they appeared, I hurried over to them. Jeff, congratulations on her pregnancy. You two look great together, I said, forcing a smile. The two of them looked shocked and turned to each other. Jeff, is this your wife? She didn't seem to know who I was and asked Jeff, who turned pale. Wah, what are you? Despite usually only looking at his smartphone, now he was staring at me with wide eyes. What's the matter? Weren't you at work today? I smiled sweetly and asked my husband, who stuttered, trying to think of an excuse. Then he blurted out, no, you see, she's just a friend's girlfriend. And I came with her as a companion. What a transparent lie. Faced with such a strained excuse, I couldn't help but sigh loudly. But Tracy snapped, annoyed by Jeff's attempt to casually handle the situation. Jeff, you said we were going to divorce, didn't you? Well, yes, but I haven't really talked about it yet. Oh? You said you were going to divorce? That's news to me. Jeff, you haven't said anything? Caught between his wife and his mistress, Jeff was at a loss for words. Let's not do this here. How about we move somewhere else? I led them back to the cafe where I had been with Claire. We each ordered a cup of coffee and took a moment to calm down. During this time, Jeff looked down, refusing to meet my gaze. Today, it seems Jeff regards the desk, not his smartphone, as his wife. However, Tracy is directly looking into my eyes. My name is Tracy. I'm in a relationship with Jeff, and as you just saw, I am pregnant with his child. Please divorce him immediately. In front of his actual wife, without flinching, the mistress asked for a divorce, leaving me so stunned that I stopped mid-motion while trying to take a sip of my drink. Tracy's eyes were intensely serious. It was as if she considered me the final boss, fully ready for battle. To not be overwhelmed by Tracy, I clenched my fists under the table, maintaining my composure, and asked, how long have you and Jeff been involved? Since a year ago. A year ago. That's when Jeff's sudden increase in overtime started. It was also around that time that he began to grow cold towards me. He became distant because of her. The lipstick in his pocket, the withdrawals from our joint account, all because of Tracy. Now that I think about it, it all adds up too well. The dots were connecting in my mind. So it's been a year. And what does Jeff want? Upon hearing this, Tracy glared sharply at Jeff. Startled by her gaze, Jeff flinched. It seemed he was pretty much under Tracy's thumb. Despite his usually arrogant demeanor at home, Frustration welled up inside me. Well, if it's out, then there's no choice. Let's get a divorce. It's unfortunate, but what can we do? There's a baby on the way. Exactly. For the baby's sake, please divorce us right away. Both my husband and his mistress, perhaps emboldened, began pressing me for a divorce. My feelings for Jeff had indeed been cooling. But why should I let them dictate the timing of our divorce? You too. As I tried to speak, Tracy cut in, since I've entered a stable period of my pregnancy. We plan to go on a honeymoon next week, before the baby arrives. Hey, don't say that. A honeymoon? They planned this even before we divorced. Truly unbelievable. Everything's out in the open now, isn't it? Well, that's true. Rebecca, that's what's happening. We're going on a honeymoon next week. I was going to lie and say I was on a business trip. Their statements were so absurd that I almost lost track of what they were saying. Was my husband always this foolish? Feeling somewhat detached now, I said, "Sure, go ahead." Upon hearing this, they looked at each other and burst into smiles, beginning to hold hands. Really? That's great, Tracy. We're free now. Can I stop hiding it? Can I post lots of pictures with Jeff on social media? Well, hold on, social media's tricky. You never know who's watching. It wouldn't be great if people found out I got someone else pregnant right after the divorce. You want to hide our relationship? That's awful. Sorry. I didn't mean to make you mad. Somehow, they started a lover's quarrel right in front of me. What was I even witnessing? Well, I'm going. Jeff, let's sort out the necessary procedures later. I said this and left the cafe, leaving them behind. Tracy really seems like a handful. I thought, almost as if it were someone else's problem. As I headed home, no longer caring about any of it. That night, Jeff didn't return home. Not just that night, but a week passed without him returning. Despite his demands for a divorce, we couldn't even talk about it if he didn't come home. As I pondered this, looking at the calendar, I remembered they had gone on their trip starting yesterday. Maybe he plans to talk about the divorce after they return, I reasoned. However, that day, a thick envelope arrived at home. It was from Jeff Thompson, my husband's name. Opening the envelope, I was baffled to find it stuffed with dozens of divorce papers, 33 to be exact. Moreover, 15 of them had photos of Jeff and Tracy enjoying themselves pasted on them. And on another 17, messages like, "Divorce quickly, I put plenty in so you can't mess it up." And, "For our child, get rid of the old lady," were scrawled as if struck by a blow. There were also notes like, "Your house belongs to me and our child now." How does that even make sense? Fury bubbled up inside me at the outrageous contents. And they had the audacity to send this during their trip? Not even giving us a chance to talk, just sending this stuff, trying to force a divorce? Nice guts. Be prepared. Something snapped inside me. Not sure if Jeff knew about the mass mailing, but since he had signed them, I could file for divorce, right? I immediately went to the lawyer's office and submitted the divorce papers. Later, possibly after returning from the trip, my now ex-husband called. "Hey. What the hell is this?" He was panicking as soon as he picked up the phone. I could guess why he was so flustered, but I deliberately asked, "Is something wrong?" "Something wrong?" I come back from a trip, and when I finally go home, there's a demolition crew at our house. What the hell is going on? Explain this to me. In fact, on the day I filed the divorce papers, I had a mind to teach Jeff and Tracy a lesson. I remembered Tracy claiming the house, That woman said she'd take our house, huh? Thinking it would serve them right and be the most effective revenge, I said. Mother, I need to talk to you. And had been discussing my husband's misconduct with my in-laws. Despite our strained relationship, I had always gotten along well with my in-laws and thought they might help. When I explained the situation to my in-laws, they were furious and told me to send all of Jeff's belongings to their house. The in-laws were absolutely livid to think he would get his mistress pregnant. He should really be taught a painful lesson. They promised to help with anything. I immediately shipped my ex-husband's belongings to his parents' house. Now, it would be up to the in-laws to handle things. I also moved all my belongings and finalized the procedures to demolish the house and clear the site. By the time my ex-husband returned, the demolition had already begun. In just another week, it will all be cleared up, it seems. What? I heard from Tracy that she was getting the house. So I had it demolished to prevent that from happening. It's impossible to think of you, that woman, and her child living there happily together. Don't mess around. How can you just do that? That house and the land it's on belong to my father. You, an outsider, can't just decide to do something like that. Yes, I know that. That's why I discussed it with your father. He said that a foolish son who cheats and gets someone pregnant doesn't deserve a house. He told me to tear it down. You told my parents. Yes, I told them everything. That you had an affair and that she is pregnant. They were quite angry, you know. What have you done? I was supposed to start living with Tracy and the child next week. I don't know about that. Oh, and since we are already divorced, don't call me again. If you need something, contact me through a lawyer. When did we get divorced? I didn't hear anything about that. And what's this about a lawyer? What? A huge stack of divorce papers arrived from Tracy. I filed them immediately. And thanks to all the evidence photos of the affair that Tracy included with the divorce papers, the divorce proceedings went smoothly. Tell her thanks for me. She did what? What is she doing? Please, we're going to have a child, and now we've lost our home. And Tracy only has a part-time job, we really don't have any money. Don't ask for compensation, please. I've already told you, I don't know about that. I'll be seeking a generous amount of compensation from you and Tracy. Just so you're prepared.
Bye.
Then. I said this and hung up without waiting for a reply. By now, my ex-husband must be wearing a miserable expression. It's a pity I couldn't see his face directly. But this should make him painfully aware of how terrible his actions were. Despite his repeated calls, I ignored them all. Later, my ex-husband was ordered to pay $25,000 in compensation. I doubted he could easily afford such a large amount from his savings. But I made sure through my lawyer that he would pay no matter what. He would probably turn to his parents for help, but since they said, "We have no intention of helping a son who cheated," he likely wouldn't receive any support from them. He got what he deserved. As for Tracy, because she sent those provocative divorce papers and photos and engaged in adultery knowing Jeff was married, I managed to get $10,000 in damages from her. I thought they would start afresh, Jeff, Tracy, and the unborn child. But it didn't work out between them. Because Tracy posted photos on social media of their vacation while still technically married to Jeff. Their affair quickly became public knowledge. The gossip spread, eventually reaching Jeff's workplace, causing a huge scandal. Jeff was furious that she posted on social media despite his warnings. But when he scolded her, Tracy lost her temper in turn. In the end, their petty quarrel led to their breakup. What a foolish story, I thought, but how they lived their lives was no longer my concern. I continued working as a nurse. Though divorced and single, somehow, I felt more at peace than when I was married. Work is busy and challenging, but every time a patient thanks me, I feel fulfilled and glad to be doing this job. After everything was settled, I contacted Claire, who had been so supportive. I got divorced. It's all over. You did well, she said, crying. Having such a kind friend who would cry for me made me feel truly fortunate. Claire and I promised to go on a girls' trip together. I might be wary of love for a while, but someday, I hope to meet a kind man who will cherish me.
Hey, is that you, Angela? Turning around at the voice while having coffee with my family at a cafe, there was my ex-husband Ted. Beside him stood Erica, the woman who took him away from me. Oh. What, you got married? I just glared at him in silence. Then he said, oh right, still single, huh? The infertile defective product. Are you planning to remarry with someone who has kids? A remarriage would suit you well. Ted seemed to find this situation amusing as he said these things. I stood up abruptly, slamming the table. Excuse me? Who are you calling infertile? What, it's not true. Just kidding around. Ted chuckled. We left the cafe feeling sick. As we were leaving, a girl who looked like their daughter passed by us. Ms. Powell. The girl called out loudly as she ran towards me. Panting, she said. I'm Michelle, his daughter. I have something very important to tell you, Ms. Powell. My name is Angela Powell, 45 years old. I live with my 3 years younger husband, Robert, our daughter Sarah, and my in-laws, making it a family of 5. Robert is a chef, and I'm in a sort of sales job. We're both somewhat workaholics. I sometimes wonder if this makes Sarah feel lonely. However, living with the in-laws who understand our work and are kind yet strict with Sarah allows us to focus on our jobs. Occasionally, on our days off, my husband showcases his exquisite cooking. Sarah envies his skills, and whenever there's a chance, she learns cooking from him. But 17 years ago, I couldn't have imagined such happy days would come my way. Because for me, Robert is my second husband. I divorced 17 years ago. My ex was Ted Walters, a colleague who was 5 years my senior. In my 20s, after getting married, I moved from sales to general affairs, continuing to work while being a housewife. I thought I was having a fairly good marriage life, but apparently, I was the only one who thought so. Because one day, Ted suddenly demanded a divorce. Hey, what's going on? Why suddenly? I was shocked as I was confronted with the divorce papers. I didn't understand what was happening. Then, Ted looked more serious than ever before. You know, you still haven't had any kids, right? I was surprised. Ted had never mentioned such a thing since we got married. However, my mother-in-law had often urged us. Living with my in-laws, for 3 years after marriage, I was constantly nagged about having children. But I thought I had kept this from Ted as much as possible. I was concerned about not being able to have children. However, I felt that forcing fertility treatments wouldn't immediately change the situation. It would happen when it could. I thought so, but that was naive. Are you divorcing me because I can't have children? That's not the only reason. I had a bad feeling then. Remember Erica? Your coworker from the sales department? I remember her. What about her? Just as I had a thought, Ted spoke. Look, Erica is pregnant with my child. What? I was at a loss for words. Everything was a complete shock to me. Not only that Ted was having an affair, but that it was with Erica, my coworker. You're divorcing me because she's pregnant? I can't accept being told unilaterally to divorce. I argued as strongly as I could. But Ted said nonchalantly. But Mom agrees with it. At that moment, I realized that was where the conversation had originated. When I pressed for confirmation, yes, I support Ted being with Erica, my mother-in-law answered simply, why? Doesn't that mean Ted cheated on me? Can you really accept that? Yes, I can. I was at a loss for words to her response. Because you've shown no signs of having children. I've been worried about you all this time. But, from their point of view, maybe it was a concern. You two never said you weren't trying. So it must be an issue with your body. And Ted continued. See, I told you. Mom just wanted to see her grandkids. And since there was no sign of that happening with you, it couldn't be helped, right? Saying this, Ted pushed the divorce papers in front of me, dumbfounded. I resigned myself to the fact that I had no place left to go, and signed and stamped the divorce papers. Looking back, I should have insisted on a fair division of assets and demanded alimony at that time. But I wasn't in a state to make sound decisions then. The reason for our divorce spread quickly at the company. Meanwhile, Erica quit her job and seemed to easily settle into being a full-time housewife after her pregnancy. As for me, instead of being seen as a poor woman who was cheated on, rumors spread that I was unattractive enough to lose my husband. Eventually, I quit the company. Unable to bear the curious glances and rumors, I withdrew into a small apartment where I moved. But I couldn't just hide forever, hunger drove me outside. Not being particularly skilled in cooking, one day I ventured out and was drawn to the smell of stew from a small restaurant. As I stared at the menu for a long time, the cook's voice asked me what I'd like to order. It seemed I had been looking at the menu for quite a while. That's when I realized how tired I was feeling. As I ate, I couldn't help but cry and sniffle. Yet, as I quietly continued eating, the cook placed extra napkins in front of me. That cook was Robert, who would later become my husband. From then on, I frequented his restaurant, and we eventually started dating. Even though I was an older divorcee, our feelings for each other didn't change, and we got married relatively quickly. Soon after our marriage, I discovered I was pregnant with our daughter, Sarah. Unlike my previous in-laws, Robert's parents were wonderful people. I am truly grateful to my in-laws, who treat me like their own daughter as my parents live far away. They even encouraged me to work if I didn't want to stay home all the time. I ended up helping at the restaurant, where they needed more hands, and I took over the accounting part, which the owner disliked. Later, the owner retired due to health issues, and Robert, whose skills were recognized, took over the restaurant. For over a decade since then, both our work and parenting went smoothly. One day, Robert, Sarah, and I were cafe hopping. It was half enjoyment, half study for us. While discussing things like, this menu is good. And, maybe this place should reconsider their portion sizes. We heard a familiar voice. Hey, isn't that Angela? Turning around at the voice, there was Ted, a man I had almost forgotten. And next to him was, ah, it really is Angela. Remember me? It's Erica. A woman, sounding childishly sweet despite her age. Erica was there. If I remember correctly, she was 5 years younger than me, so she should be around 40 now. Still trying to look younger than her age, her fashion and makeup were somewhat inappropriate. It's been a while. I responded in a stiff voice. Seeing my expression, Robert and Sarah looked worried. Then Ted pressed on. Oh. What, you got married? I just glared at him silently. Then he said, oh right, still single, huh? The infertile defective product. Are you planning to remarry with someone who has kids? A remarriage would suit you well. Ted seemed to find this situation amusing as he said these things. Robert and Sarah looked bewildered by his off-target comments. I stood up, slamming the table. Excuse me? Who are you calling infertile? What? Angela, why are you suddenly getting angry? What, isn't it true? You can't have kids, so you married someone with kids, right? What is wrong with these people? I gestured towards Robert and Sarah and finally spoke firmly. That's not true. I married this man a long time ago, and this child is the one I gave birth to. Come on, lying again. Ted chuckled. I was appalled. How could he keep ignoring my words and insist I was infertile? Shall we leave here? Robert suggested as he saw my distress. Sarah also looked uneasy. Yes, let's go. I don't want anything to do with this. Oh right, so this seat will be free then. Hey, come over here. As we were about to leave, a high school-aged girl approached the entrance somewhat timidly. Ah, that must be the child Erica was pregnant with back then. I thought this as I passed by the girl. Let's forget about this place and head to the next cafe. Yes, let's enjoy some coffee properly this time. We checked the map, and just then, the girl shouted. Ms. Powell. As she ran towards us, breathing heavily. Panting, she said. I'm Michelle, his daughter. Ms. Powell, I have something very important to tell you. She appealed to me desperately. And that was the first step in changing our fate. 6 months later, I was heading to a building for a meeting. My destination was a company on an upper floor. Excuse me, I have an appointment with Daniel, the sales director. Sorry to keep you waiting, Miss Powell. He started to say, then paused with a realization. Could it be, Ms. Norman? Daniel, the sales director, called me by my maiden name. Yes, this is the company where I used to work. Yes, it's been a long time, Daniel. I gave a bright smile to my former boss. So, the tenant moving in downstairs is? Yes, it's my shop. Oh. What a surprise. Daniel reacted with a bit of an exaggerated surprise. I'm really sorry about back then. I couldn't do anything. Daniel, you were in a different department back then, and I think it was impossible for you to stop those tactless people. Yes, that's true. But I still feel bad about the unpleasant experiences I caused you, being his boss and all. Just then, Ted Walters, who seemed to have returned from a sales visit, entered the floor. Angela, why are you here? Did you come because you met me the other day? I just silently watched Ted, who still dared to joke in such a place. Does he realize his boss is nearby? Hey, you aren't thinking of getting back together, are you? Hey, what are you saying? Daniel said this while calming Ted down. It seemed that Ted finally realized that I was with my former boss. He quickly wore a solemn expression in apology. Ms. Powell is here today for a business discussion. A business discussion? You know the tenant space on the first floor that's been vacant for a while? Now that you mention it. My shop will be moving in there. Ted Walters looked puzzled. Wait a minute. Isn't a famous coffee chain supposed to be moving into that tenant space? Yes, that's right, isn't it, Daniel? I turned the conversation to Daniel. Yes, that's right. Everyone's been looking forward to that store moving in. So what, you joined the sales department of that chain store? No. I paused briefly before continuing. It's my shop, any problem with that? Ted Walters looked even more confused. Hey, Ted, I don't know what you're misunderstanding, but didn't I tell you that today's visitor is Miss Powell, the owner of that chain store? The owner? Ted shouted, then looked back and forth between Mr. Daniel and me, sweating. Listen, Ted. Today is strictly about business discussions. Be respectful. Sorry about this, Ms. Powell. No worries. Although today is for business, I actually wanted to offer some of our coffee for the people at this company to try. As soon as I said this, there was a sudden buzz around the floor. Wait, are you treating us to coffee from that store? The young office lady reacted quickly. Yes, that's right. I hope you all will become our most valued customers, and I look forward to a long relationship. Today, before the shop officially opens, I would like to offer you a taste. Please feel free to visit the shop afterwards. I looked at Daniel and said, Is that okay with you, Daniel? Daniel responded. Yes, let's happily accept the invitation. Everyone, let's go. Almost everyone on the floor, except for a few who stayed behind, headed down together. Welcome, said the new store manager, greeting. Our staff, who had been waiting, greeted the employees. Please, everyone, have a seat wherever you like, I said, and the employees began to take their seats with unusual eagerness. Our coffee isn't incredibly unique. It's more affordable and simpler than a certain well-known coffee shop that's heavy on toppings. Our selling points are a clear menu and delicious meals. We offer takeout for those who want it at lunch and a slightly pricier but tasty dinner option. The success of our first store, which crafted such a menu, led to its prosperity. After it became successful, we trained staff and expanded our stores, and now I am the president of a coffee chain with an annual turnover of $50 million. So, how about this spot over here for you folks? I invited Daniel and Ted to a table somewhat removed from the others. Then, several people stood up. What? Ted was surprised by their appearance. Wait, Michelle, why are you here? Why? Well. Michelle snorted and continued. Because I'm a customer today too. But, isn't this place only for related personnel today? Ted hurriedly replied. Because I'm also involved today. Oh, and by the way, Dad, my other father is here too. Ted seemed not to immediately grasp the meaning of his daughter's words. Michelle continued, ignoring her father's puzzled look. Let me introduce you. This is Jeff Morris, my real father. Ted looked even more confused by what was being said. Well, it's understandable that you wouldn't know, Dad. We need one more guest to arrive here. Saying this, Michelle turned towards the display window. Beyond it, a woman was hurriedly walking towards us, looking around anxiously. It was Erica, trying to look excessively young, just like when we had reunited half a year ago. Erica, in a panic, opened the door and exclaimed, Michelle, where's Michelle? As she rushed over. Here comes another guest. Mom, over here. Michelle said calmly. Hearing her voice, Erica turned and quickly approached, her face registering shock. Michelle, why are you with this man? She asked with a trembling voice. Why? Because he's also my father. Michelle continued, her voice steady in front of her stunned mother. Watching the two of them, Ted seemed to finally understand the situation. Hey Erica, do you know anything about this? Do you have a relationship with this man? I don't know him. I don't know this man at all. She vigorously shook her head, trying to flee the scene, but Robert and I stopped her. Since you've come all this way, why not stay for a cup of coffee? I offered Erica a chair and signaled to the staff to bring some coffee. Indeed, our coffee has been quite popular lately. You really should have a cup before you go, I said, practically forcing her to take a seat. What a brave young woman, despite being only 16, I thought to myself. Yes, that day, Michelle had chased after us to seek advice. The reason she came to me was that she had heard I was once her father's wife. Her concern, as we sat down in a newly entered cafe, was about a man claiming to be her real father. I understand that you divorced my father because I was born. Who told you that? My grandmother. My former mother-in-law. She had actually gone out of her way to tell her granddaughter such a thing. It seemed just like her. Have you discussed this with anyone else? Michelle replied she hadn't talked to anyone about it. Is it all right for you to discuss such important matters with me, almost a stranger? Haven't you talked to your mother about it? I don't want to. I don't trust my mom, especially when it comes to relationships with men. Michelle said this matter-of-factly. Because I can't trust my mom, I thought maybe this man could really be my father. She was referring to Jeff, who was with us today. Initially skeptical, she grew more convinced as they talked about gifts he mentioned giving her in the past. When I was younger, my mom would suddenly give me expensive clothes and accessories, always when my dad was away on business trips. As a child, she was merely happy to receive such special gifts, but as she grew older, she started to feel something was off. During a conversation with Jeff, she asked if he ever sent her gifts. Jeff immediately smiled, pleased to hear that she had received them. Further questioning revealed that Jeff remembered the details and timing of these gifts well, matching Michelle's memories. So, I decided to ask for a DNA test with him. Hearing this, I was struck by how strong she was to initiate such a step herself. But saying that, what do you think about your parents? I don't really care about my father. He's rarely home, and I don't even know if it's because of his job. Ted, it seems, had become an indifferent parent, despite using the desire for children as a reason to leave me. Michelle's next words surprised me even more. Mom might be dating someone, I'm not sure, but there's definitely another man she likes. I saw them together coming home in a taxi recently. Her sarcastic tone was painful to hear. But you were with your family at the cafe recently, weren't you? That was just for show. Dad forced us to go, calling it family time. In contrast, your family seemed genuinely happy. She said this with a hint of sadness. Excuse me for asking, but isn't your daughter a stepchild? Absolutely not. This child was born to me. I hugged Sarah as I spoke firmly. Then that time, Dad was really rude to you. I've heard about it since then. Yes. In the past, your father and grandmother used that as a reason to force a divorce on me. But after I remarried, I had this child immediately and have been living happily ever since. I had completely forgotten about your family, to be honest. I didn't even recognize them immediately. Is that so? I'm envious. Hearing this, I felt compelled to help her. It seemed that family was still troubled, as always. Over the past 6 months, I had been present during meetings between Michelle and Jeff, ultimately arranging for today's meeting. It's really been a while, Erica. Jeff Morris laughed as he said this. I don't know anything about you. Erica said this in a flustered manner. Well, I must have changed a lot too. But DNA doesn't change. With that, Jeff presented Ted and Erica with a DNA test result. Both took it and looked intently. The results showed no parental relationship between Michelle and Ted, but a nearly 100% match with Jeff. Realizing the implication, Ted suddenly looked at Erica, his complexion changing. Erica, seeing his reaction, became visibly more anxious. No, this is a lie, it's forged. Jeff replied. Then I think you should test as many times as you want. Well, I believe it will be the same no matter how many times you test it. In fact, here are the results from several tests. He smoothly pulled out more test results, presumably from different agencies. At this, Erica lunged at Michelle. How could you do this to me? What do you mean, how could I? Where did you come from today, Mom? What are you saying? Then, Michelle rummaged through her bag, took out her smartphone, and after a few taps, turned the screen towards Erica. I received this. Displayed were images of Erica entering and leaving a hotel with another man. It's been photoshopped. It has to be. No, that's not the case. Jeff said. How can you say that? What gives you the right? Because, I am not interested in taking this child from you. You can't possibly do that. Erica exclaimed. I can if the parent-child relationship is proven. And, Mr. Walters, can you really handle the fact that she has been deceiving you all along? Ted was at a loss for words. Cuckolded? At his voice, the whispering office ladies started to murmur among themselves. Indeed, I had invited company people here to make this issue known. Daniel came over to calm the office ladies. Ted, what is this all about? I don't know. I'd like to know myself. Sweat was visible on Ted's forehead. But you, Ted, left Miss Powell to marry your current wife, and now you're causing trouble at home again? That's a bit unbecoming for someone who's supposed to be an executive. What do you mean? Ted looked around nervously and suddenly yelled. Stop looking at me. In reality, no one was openly staring at him, they were merely glancing discreetly. However, for Ted, even those fleeting glances felt piercing. Erica, seeing her husband's distress, became visibly unsettled. What does this mean? What should we do? It's about time for you to come forward. It's your turn. Signaling with that, a man from a distant table approached. This is the lawyer I've hired. I'm prepared to dispute the recognition and custody of this child. What about you? Ted was speechless, frozen in place. Jeff continued to press him. Is there something wrong? You've been raising another man's child all this time. Doesn't that upset you? It's upsetting, yes. But, without a child, my mother. Oh, right. I blurted out. You were always weak to your mother, weren't you? The murmurs around grew a bit louder. The office ladies whispered. Ted has always been a mama's boy. Michelle, what do you want? You won't betray me, your father, right? As Ted frantically spoke, Michelle pondered. Honestly, it doesn't really matter to me. Ted was visibly shocked by her words. Perhaps he had loved his daughter in his own way, and her indifference cut deep. You know, Dad, I think you're just too oblivious. Not just about Mom, but about me too. What do you mean? I've been meeting with this dad for over half a year. You didn't know anything, did you? I knew you weren't interested in me. Maybe you were too busy with work. But how could you not notice Mom's affair? What have you been working for? Sweat started dripping down Ted's cheeks. Now, let's not say things we can't take back. It was Jeff who calmed the situation. I understand. Even if I disappeared, this dad wouldn't run to look for me, he'd do it for Grandma. You always say, good grades, Grandma will be happy, or being smart must be our genes, never mentioning anything from Mom's side. Hearing this, Erica turned her head away from her daughter. So, Dad, you just wanted a child for Grandma's sake, right? What do you say? Ted was lost for words. Michelle's face fell slightly. See. This is the kind of person he is, she said to Jeff. At that moment, Erica suddenly shouted. Michelle. What are you saying? Your father has been working hard for us every day. The same dad you easily betray, Mom? You didn't notice either. Well, yeah, I wasn't home much anyway. And when I brought it up, Mr. Morris checked it for me. Checked it? Yes. The lawyer responded. Mr. Morris asked me to investigate your affair. We used a detective agency and secured solid evidence. Those photos earlier are just part of it. My goodness. Daniel sighed as he watched the chaos unfold. To think you've caused all this trouble. Ted, you were excellent at your job in sales, but it turns out you can't even manage your own home. No, but it's not my fault. Ted's words grew weaker. Jeff pressed further. So, what will you do? As I said before, I'm ready to fight this. As he was speaking, Ted suddenly collapsed. Call an ambulance. The room erupted into chaos. It seemed Ted couldn't handle everything crashing down around him all at once. There's no helping it. Let's discuss this calmly later. Suddenly, Erica turned to Jeff and spat bitterly. You've come up in the world, using lawyers and detectives so easily. You're not like you used to be. That's right. Jeff answered matter-of-factly. That's because I got rid of a gold-digging disaster like you. I've found better finances, a better job, and a wonderful wife. Hearing this, Erica slumped her shoulders right there. I apologize for causing a scene. Please enjoy your time. I smiled at the office ladies who were keenly watching the drama unfold. After that, it wasn't long before Ted and Erica divorced. My former mother-in-law was furious with Erica for several reasons. One was obviously the cuckolding, but another was the revelation that Ted was infertile, a fact he hadn't even bothered to check himself, which fueled his mother's rage. After the storm settled, she visibly aged rapidly. Apparently, she even began showing signs of dementia. She needed care, and it was certain. Given his poor management at home and the recent family drama, he was sidelined in his job, Daniel informed me. Honestly, for Ted now, that sideline position might be all he can handle. The several shocks had severely affected his mental health. Having always believed he was right, to learn not only that I wasn't infertile but that he was sterile, and that his beloved daughter had so readily written him off, was too much. It seems that a multitude of issues suddenly overwhelmed him, and the tension he had maintained to confidently navigate through society abruptly snapped. On the other hand, Erica tried to turn to her affair partner after the divorce, but he desperately claimed it was a fling, that he hadn't known she was married or her real age, and somehow slipped away. Apparently, Erica had been pretending to be 10 years younger during her affairs. When her lover found out her real age, the disgust was evident, the lawyer told me. After being abandoned, Erica tried to turn to her parents but was rejected and soon found herself utterly without refuge. A woman who had secretly cheated while playing the devoted homemaker was left with nothing. I think it's best that she experiences the full consequences of her actions. Michelle, however, was taken in by her biological father and his wife. They pleaded with her to stay with them, even if just until she was an adult. Mr. Morris's wife had been unable to have children, and over 6 months, she and Michelle had grown close. A child should have no sins, she deserves happiness from here on out. Meanwhile, the new store prospered, perhaps because of the little drama, and we became good friends with the company upstairs. To the office ladies, the story of a divorced wife who managed to become the president of a chain store was something of an aspiration. It feels a bit funny being seen that way, but times have changed, I think. And Michelle and my daughter Sarah keep in touch, oddly enough. Kids make friends in the strangest ways, despite the rivalry between their mothers. Robert watches over such a family with a warm gaze. As I cherish this family, I intend to work hard and live happily, thinking of both my career and my home.
So, are we taking the car today? Or maybe your place? Let's go to a hotel. On the way back from the hospital, I saw my husband walking hand in hand with a young woman. Who could she be? She was wearing revealing clothes. And I think she was more than 10 years younger than my husband. She doesn't look like someone from his company. Could it be an affair? Even though it was right after returning from a donor test for a disease that had been discovered in my husband. I somehow managed to control my emotions and glared at my husband when he came home that evening and asked, "I saw you walking with a young woman. What is that all about? Betraying me like this is the worst. How can you do something so awful? No. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're such a great woman? Marriage is supposed to be supported by the man. And the moment a woman stops being a woman, it all falls apart. Men always want young and attractive women. What is he talking about? There's no excuse to ruin a marriage for such selfish reasons. It seems he's trying to justify his actions, but it's just an affair. I will never forgive him. I don't need a menopausal old hag like you. Should I just divorce you? Divorce? I've been thinking about it for a while now. You can't get pregnant. As a woman, you're finished. You look old, and you're not attractive at all, so I've been wanting to break up. That's why I cheated and was attracted to a younger woman. It's only natural, right? I understand. Then let's get a divorce. But don't forget, you're the one who's carrying a ticking time bomb inside your body. And who will be there to help you with that? My name is Kim, and I currently work as an office clerk in a small to medium-sized enterprise. Although I work as an office clerk, I initially joined this company as a salesperson. I'm back. Welcome back. How was today? Well, I was brushed off lightly. I'm sorry. It was a project that you had been warming up, and I couldn't land it. Well, don't worry too much about it. It can't be helped, so don't get too down. He was my senior who took care of my training. This person was truly kind to me. He taught me everything from scratch about sales, and I worked hard following his teachings, but I guess my personality, which couldn't speak assertively and shrank from slightly aggressive attitudes, wasn't suited for this. My sales performance was always among the lowest, and I felt uncomfortable within the company. Since it was a small to medium-sized enterprise, we were all trying to increase the company's sales. But I felt like I was the only one dragging everyone down. Should I quit? Maybe it's better to change to a different profession. That's what I had started to think. Excuse me. Can I have a moment? What's up? I heard that you were looking to hire a new office clerk. Yes, that's right. The company has grown a bit, and I want to increase the number of office staff. Do you have someone you know who wants to apply? Not exactly. I was wondering if I could apply myself. I've been trying hard as a salesperson for the past 2 years. But I haven't been able to achieve results, and I feel like I'm holding others back. Even when there are good projects, I can't land them because of me. So if possible, I'd like to work as an office clerk. I see. In my mind, by becoming an office clerk, I thought it would benefit the company if we could fill the vacant sales position from outside. Of course, I felt sorry for my senior who had been nurturing me, but I was also mentally suffering. Understood. I've heard about your troubles from other employees. And I think you can handle a certain level of office work, so if you're okay with it, let's do that. Really? Of course. But about the salary, it will be that of an office clerk. Is that okay? Of course. No problem. All right. After that, I started working as an office clerk, mainly interacting with the employees I got along with. So there was no need to uselessly strain myself or stay on edge. Certainly, the salary was less than when I was in sales. But I could work without accumulating stress, so every day was truly brighter. After that, through an acquaintance, I started dating a man. And both my work and personal life were fulfilling. I promise to always cherish you. Will you marry me? Really? Are you really going to marry me? Of course. I will protect you for the rest of my life. I was so moved by the proposal from the man I was dating that I cried. I had never had confidence in myself, and I didn't think anyone would marry someone like me. Because I had always thought that way, I became very emotional. Although I started in sales, I eventually moved to an office job, which was one of my complexes. I couldn't handle even the basic tasks assigned to me. I had always been a negative thinker. Of course, the stress of work disappeared, but the truth is, my confidence continued to diminish. That's why I vowed in my heart to cherish the man who chose me. Then our married life began, and we were a couple working together. Living a problem-free married life. However, hey, can you cover the living expenses? In return, I'll save money. Huh? Am I supposed to cover all the expenses?
Yeah.
I'll save the rest of the money after taking out my allowance, so that's okay, right? This is my weakness. When spoken to strongly, I can't talk back. Since I only receive a small salary as an office clerk, after paying for rent, food, and utility bills, there isn't much money left. We moved to a reasonably large apartment after getting married. And though it was secondhand, we also bought a car. We had agreed to split expenses equally. Understood. But I'm a bit surprised. I thought we were going to split everything equally. It's easier if you manage all the expenses. I'll manage all the savings, so don't worry. Well, If my husband says so, maybe it's better that way. Plus, if he's saving most of his salary, I think we can save up a significant amount in a short time. I wanted to save as much as possible, thinking about having children in the future. That's why I accepted his proposal. However, after we got married, he started going out more at night. Hello. Aren't you coming home yet? I'm going out for drinks with colleagues today, won't be back until midnight. Again. What? I'm not your parent, don't meddle in my private life. It's my business who I drink with and where, right?
Yeah.
Indeed, we had agreed not to interfere with each other's privacy even after marriage. It's not that I dislike him going to drinking parties. It's just that I'm dissatisfied with him going out without any notice. I come home earlier than him and wait while cooking. I always prepare the bath since he comes home at a set time. I just wish he would contact me. If he did, I would make something simple for dinner and finish the household chores. Then take a bath time, being ready for the meal time. A simple message would suffice. I have mentioned this a few times. But my husband doesn't seem to care. Maybe he doesn't understand because he never cooks or does household chores himself. Also, his personality changes when he drinks. That's why I couldn't say much about it. Hey. Your Lord and Master is home. Welcome back. Oh, hello. Sorry. He seems pretty drunk. I'm sorry too. Thank you for bringing him home. That day around midnight, my husband came home, escorted by a colleague. He was so drunk he couldn't even walk. You're not a student, please understand your limits when drinking. I was dismayed. It's pointless to say anything now that he's drunk. I thanked the colleague who brought him home and helped my husband to the bed. He fell asleep immediately, and around noon the next day. Hey. Got any medicine? Medicine. Huh? Hangover medicine, obviously. Why don't you understand that without me saying? It's only natural to prepare that if I'm going out drinking, right? I'm sorry. I'll go buy it right now. Run and come back in 10 minutes. What does he think I am? I sighed, but without complaining, I cycled to the nearby pharmacy. It was already winter, and just pedaling made my dry skin sting painfully on my face and hands. If you're going to drink, you should buy your own medicine beforehand. Why do I have to do this? As I went to buy it, I felt a surge of anger towards my husband. I'm back. I got the medicine. Took you long enough. You're always so slow. That's why you can only work as an office clerk. I went out of my way to buy it, and not a single word of thanks. I was astounded by his lack of gratitude, but I wasn't expecting anything from my husband anyway. Well, he's the type to take advantage of others, so probably he doesn't feel grateful at all. That's why he can't even say thank you. I don't care anymore. It's none of my concern. While complaining, my husband took the medicine from me. Swallowed it, changed his clothes, and went out again. Going out again. It was a day off, so he could do whatever he wanted. But I wished he would help with the household chores a bit. I do everything on weekdays, so it would be nice if he could help at least on the weekends. Even just one day on the weekend would be fine, but since we got married, he has never helped with the housework. I was timid, so initially, I thought he was a manly person who could lead me, but now, it seems he's just selfish and looks down on others. I was getting sick of these days, but that day, something unexpected happened. Can we talk? I have something important to discuss. Something important. About work? No. About my illness. I've been feeling unwell lately, and I often have hyperventilation at work. So, I went to the hospital, and they discovered I have a disease. You're kidding. I always thought he was strong and rarely caught a cold. So I was truly shocked by my husband's confession. I had never imagined that my husband could be sick. However, according to him, the disease had progressed significantly. And he urgently needed an organ transplant. We need to find a donor, and it can't happen immediately, but the situation seemed quite serious. So, you don't need to be hospitalized? I got some medicine, so I'll be okay, for a while, but I still need a donor. You should go to the hospital this weekend and get tested. If you're a match, I'll need you to be the donor. Having heard that from my husband, my heart skipped a beat deep inside. Of course. If there's anything I can do for my husband, I want to help him with all my might. That's how a marriage should be, and it's what I should do. However, if possible, I did not want to be a donor. One reason is that my husband had not been treating me with care as his wife. It seemed he only saw me as a tool to be used. The only time I felt cherished as a wife was during the first month of our marriage. Also, I was scared of undergoing surgery. Of course, with someone in front of me needing a donor, it wasn't the time to be scared of surgery. But being mentally weak, I couldn't make the decision even though I knew I had to. So, what was the result? You are a match. We can perform the surgery on a day that suits you. The next day, I took a day off work and went to the hospital for tests. I hadn't told my husband, but the result was a match. I could save my husband's life, that was the outcome. No matter how little he cared for me, he was still my married partner. Of course, I was scared of the surgery, but I vowed in my heart to donate for my husband. However, on the way back home that day. So, are we taking the car today? Or maybe your place? Let's go to a hotel. On the way back from the hospital, I saw my husband walking hand in hand with a young woman. Who could she be? She was wearing revealing clothes. And I think she was more than 10 years younger than my husband. She didn't look like someone from his company. Could it be an affair? Indeed, my husband often came home late at night. But I thought it was just because he was out drinking with colleagues and seniors. But, could he actually have been spending pleasant nights with a mistress? The reality was, there in front of me, my husband was walking hand in hand with a young woman. This couldn't be happening, it was a complete betrayal of me. My mind went blank, and I was completely panicked, but without noticing me. My husband went on his way. I took a deep breath and somehow calmed my emotions as I went home. That evening, when my husband returned, I glared at him and pressed him for answers. I saw you walking with a young woman. What is that all about?
Ah.
You saw that? Yes. Betraying me like this is the worst. How can you do something so awful? No. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're such a great woman? Marriage is supposed to be supported by the man, and the moment a woman stops being a woman, it all falls apart. Men always want young and attractive women. What is he talking about? There's no excuse to ruin a marriage for such selfish reasons. It seems he's trying to justify his actions, but it's just an affair. I will never forgive him. He had been using me thoroughly, probably because he no longer saw me as his wife. My suspicions were correct. To my husband, I was nothing important. I was just a convenient existence who paid the bills and did the housework and cooking. To take people lightly like that, that's too much. You're not planning to take any responsibility for this, are you? Right. I don't need a menopausal old hag like you. Should I just divorce you? Huh? I've been thinking about it for a while now. You can't get pregnant. As a woman, you're finished. You look old, and you're not attractive at all, so I've been wanting to break up. That's why I cheated and was attracted to a younger woman. It's only natural, right? Ridiculous. What does he think marriage is? And I had never thought he looked down on me to this extent. But having it said so clearly actually felt refreshing. He was sick, and yet he was the partner I married. I thought there might be some fluctuations in my feelings, but I was completely done. Does he want a divorce? Then I'd gladly grant it. But never forget this. I will never forgive what you've done. If you want a divorce, I'll give you one. But don't bother me anymore, okay? You better not come back asking to remarry me. I'm completely cutting ties with you. Understood. With that, I had him submit the divorce papers. The divorce was finalized quickly, and since the apartment was registered in my ex-husband's name, I moved out, ending our life together. I then prepared for a lawsuit for compensation and contacted him a month later. I disliked direct contact, so I had a lawyer who was helping with the compensation claim contact him. But that evening, my ex-husband called me repeatedly. I didn't want to talk to such a person or hear his voice. But I decided to let out all my feelings. I boldly picked up the phone. Hey. What do you mean you were the donor? That was the first thing my ex-husband said. I hadn't told him when we divorced. But the affair had been exposed on the day I found out I could be a donor. If I hadn't known about the affair then, I would have unknowingly been a donor to a betrayer. I thought God must be watching, and I also thought there was no way I'd donate to him. Of course, keeping silent was one option, but this was my revenge. While you were having fun with a young woman, I was worried about you and went for a donor test. It seems I'm a match, but I have no intention of helping a betrayer. No, don't say that. If you don't donate, I'll have to start looking all over again. Please. Then tell me what's in it for me. I see no benefit in donating, do I? It might look like I'm heartless just from the text. But I don't want to sacrifice my body to help my ex-husband. Even if there were benefits, I couldn't bring myself to reach out to my ex-husband. The emotional wounds my ex-husband inflicted on me were deep. And I wanted him to understand that. I was your wife and thought I should be the donor. But who betrayed that? Who is the person at fault here? That's true, but that's a different story. Just your cooperation could save a precious life. Life is equal. Of course, I believe that. There's no difference in the weight of life, and every person holds the same value. However, I couldn't see this monster of desire as a human being. Even if no donor is found in the end, that's just how it is. It would only mean that what he has done has come back to haunt him. I don't feel sorry for him if his illness worsens, and I think he should do as he pleases. If you get better and are left unchecked, more women will end up hurt like I was. Wouldn't it be better if you never recovered? What are you saying to a sick person? You didn't cherish me as your wife, so why should I care for you as a sick person? Don't you see the contradiction in what you're saying? You're the one talking nonsense. What do you think human life is? I have more morals than you. But even denying that, I don't want to help you. Besides, I'm a stranger to you now, so I don't know. Once he realized I had no intention of being a donor, my ex-husband either groaned or began to moan. How miserable. I felt no pity and just wanted to end the call quickly. Is that all? Oh, and I think you've been contacted by the lawyer? But make sure you transfer the compensation properly. That too. That amount of money is ridiculous. It's not ridiculous at all. Didn't you tell me that you wanted to save up, so I should pay all the living expenses? But it turned out you were just squandering it on your mistress. Do you think that's acceptable? It also came out during the divorce that my ex-husband's savings, which he intended as his share of the assets, were almost gone. Since I paid all the living expenses, I had the right to half of the savings. However, since he had squandered it away, there were no savings left. It was clear from the beginning of our marriage that he had been betraying me. I will make sure to get the money I'm owed. I don't have any money. And I'm going to have a lot of expenses coming up. Right. Moving costs, payments to me, medical bills, huh? Can't you afford that? If you knew that, why did you ask for such an amount? Why? Because that's how you take responsibility as an adult. Don't you know that, even after being in the workforce for over 10 years? I'm at a loss for words. Because it's common sense. And if you don't pay, I'll ask the lawyer to take it to court. If you're prepared for that, do as you like. My ex-husband must know he is 100% at fault, but he's probably hoping somehow I'll reconsider, as he is truly in a desperate situation now. No sign of remorse. If there had been even a slight hint of regret, there might have been room for compassion. But it seems that people who betray others will always continue to do so. Wait a minute. Surely that can't be. If you do that, you'll regret it later. You will definitely have a day of regret. So what? No matter how you try to convince me, my decision won't change. But I was gradually getting annoyed at my ex-husband's attitude. Surely he was shocked to find out I was the donor, and he must be regretting his choices deeply. But if he's regretting it, why doesn't he choose to apologize? To truly apologize, isn't that what he should do before making excuses and talking nonsense? Without even an apology, his words to me were, "You'll regret it?" Does he think threatening me will make me agree to donate? With such a personality, really, no one will ever come forward to help him. You see? It's because you only think of yourself that no one wants to help you. You don't think you've done anything wrong, do you? What? If you had even a little regret, you could at least apologize, right? I'm asking if you're reflecting on what you've done to me. Of course. I'm sorry. So about the donor. Normally, you apologize without linking it to the donation, right? Apologize then ask for the donation? Are you joking? Can't you stop joking around? No matter what I say, it's useless. Maybe I was foolish to expect anything. It's pointless to ask such a person to reflect. That's why I chose the option to divorce him and make him pay compensation instead of giving him a chance. I've had enough. It's a waste of time to keep dealing with such a person, so I decided to end it. I don't care what you do from now on, but I will definitely not help you. Keep that in mind. My feelings won't change under any circumstances. And if you don't pay the compensation, I'll have the lawyer take it to court. With that, I ended the call. Afterward, I left all communication to the lawyer, and though I didn't have anything direct to say, his life was quite miserable indeed. Actually, that person quit his job due to a stress-related illness, you know? From stress? Yes. He was scared that if no one donated, he couldn't survive. Of course, his life isn't immediately in danger, but he was apparently under a lot of stress. To think that such a brazen person could feel stressed was a bit surprising. If he could feel stressed, he should have considered my feelings a bit more. Then he might have understood what it feels like to be cheated on. How much stress builds up when you're treated like a tool. Even if he had understood, it might not have changed anything. But he did pay the compensation. I wonder how he managed to pay such a large amount. I think he took out loans. Loans? Yes. He borrowed a considerable amount from consumer finance, and that's how he paid. But now he can't repay it, and he's been contacting people he knows asking for help. He even tried to contact me, but I ignored him. You ignored him? Well, after all he's done to exploit and betray you, my dear friend, it's only natural. It's the retribution he deserves. Not only from me, but he can't even get help from his own friends. Now he's battling not just his illness, but also loneliness. Well, it's entirely his own doing, and I think it's a harsh lesson. How much harm he has done and how much trouble he has caused me. If he can't even understand that in this situation, it's a sign that he's finished as a person. Well, probably being finished is why no one wants to extend a hand to help him. But maybe his mistress will stand by him? Maybe she's his only emotional support? No, they've already split up. What? Oh. Didn't you hear? It seems she was only after his money and has moved on to another man already. I was honestly surprised to hear that even his mistress had left him. But thinking about it, it makes sense. My ex-husband had spent most of his earnings on his affair. That means he was spending thousands of dollars each month. He was just a regular employee, but to his mistress, he must have seemed like an easy mark as long as he was spending so much each month. But she disappeared once she realized there was nothing more to take. Such continuous betrayal might make my ex-husband distrustful of others, I thought. But at the end of the day, it's his own fault. Well, since he's always been deceiving and using me, he can't complain about being deceived and used himself. He did the same thing, after all. Exactly. Well, whatever happens to him now is none of our business. Just as she said, there's no point in thinking about my ex-husband anymore. Since then, I've completely forgotten about him and am enjoying my second life. I'm still working as an office clerk, and the salary isn't high nor the job fulfilling. But I'm needed and appreciated by the other employees. And that alone makes me feel that it's worth doing this job. Sometimes I still think about the donor issue. Of course, considering what my ex-husband did, there will always be people who criticize my decision to refuse the donation. Morally, I can understand if some say my choice was wrong. But everything resulted from the choices he made, and I have no regrets about my decision. No matter how much suffering my ex-husband endures in the future, it has nothing to do with me. Let him continue to suffer. That is the way he can atone for his sins, I believe. Marriage isn't just something on paper. It's a declaration of the intent to cooperate and help each other through anything. However, those who betray that easily will eventually be betrayed by somebody. And what they do comes back to them. I intend to live on, valuing the people and the environment around me, so I don't end up like my ex-husband.